One of the cornerstones of fighting game movesets is the projectile. Most fighting games, especially 2D games, give a majority of their characters at least one projectile to help them fight from a distance, or just have an extra tool that travels for combos or setups or whatnot. Some characters have more than others, but in the history of fighting games, the things fighters have chosen to throw has evolved yet also stayed the same. Many typical projectiles involve energy of some kind, standard weapons, elements of nature, angelic light, etc. But every so often, you get a goofy or maybe even serious character who throws something that stretches your suspension of disbelief even further than you expected. So for this video, I want to look at some of the odder choices of projectiles that fighting game characters have thrown out over the years. Odd is in the eye of the beholder here, but generally, it's a projectile not typical to the game that they're in. Only restriction is one representative per series of origin. And because YouTube enjoys when I say this in the intro, like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy fighting game content similar to this idea. Now, let's throw out the top 10 weirdest fighting game projectiles. Number 10, Mei-Ten-Kun's energy pillow from the King of Fighters. Perfect projectile to start this list. It's an item that doesn't seem like it would be damaging in a fight, but with the power of video game, it is. Mei-Ten-Kun is a sleepy fighter who seems to fight barely awake, but thanks to his power, or something like that, he can naturally perform fighting techniques in this state. To really drill in the fact that he's a sleepy guy, he's always carrying around his pillow. However, it's not just for show or a quick nap. He can infuse energy into it and throw it as a projectile, so there you go, that's how you cook energy pillows. Though he's still holding the pillow after he throws it, so I'm not sure if it's actually an illusion of a pillow projectile, or if it's just because he needs to hold it to do his other moves so the game mechanics duplicate it. Regardless, this is actually one of the best projectiles in the game. It's a slow moving projectile, but it has pretty fast startup, and Mei-Ten-Kun can move around while it's floating along, making his setups even more tricky. Now you have to try to avoid a pillow coming towards you at the opposite of light speed, and Mei-Ten-Kun is also attempting to hit you. Or maybe he's staying back to see how you would react and he does something in response. The great thing about this projectile is Mei-Ten-Kun can move around freely almost immediately after firing it off, so he has a lot of versatility in what he can do. He's not locked into recovering from it or is limited to certain moves afterwards, he's all good to go. He can even hit you with the pillow that remains in his hands while the pillow projectile is coming towards you, so you get double pillow action. For how silly this projectile seems, they did a good job making it feel sleepy since it moves so slowly, but they balance it where it's not just a gimmick. This is vital to Mei-Ten-Kun's game plan. Also, the combination of him and one of my friends maining Bedman and Guilty Gear Xrd unintentionally gaslit me into thinking there were more sleepy fighting game characters like them. I thought this was a character archetype, but really there's only him, both Bedman, Jigglypuff, and that's it. But I swear I'll find more. I will have enough to do a top 10 sleepy fighting game characters video someday.
All eyes are on the winner of that fierce fight! Winner!
Number 9, Anacharis' Oke no Sabaki from Darkstalkers. Anacharis is probably the weirdest Darkstalkers character to me, which is saying a lot because this game has a lot of weird characters. From his personality, design, and backstory to his in-game mechanics, they're all weird or mysterious. His speed is slow, but his reach is wide, and his movement is floaty. He also has a teleport where he breaks reality by dashing off-screen backwards, and then dashing forward from off-screen on the other side. And to go with the oddities in his moveset, of course he has one of the most unique projectiles in the game. Oke no Sabaki, also known as the Pharaoh's Curse, spits out some curse energy as it slowly creeps at the opponent. Like that is some bona fide pure curse energy right there. Look at those faces! Anacharis even has the whole decrepit head emerging when he does it. And he can only do this in the air, but I'm burying the lead here. When you get hit by the curse, it turns the opponent into a tiny thing related to what they are. Some of them are obvious, like Dimitri the vampire becomes a bat, or Felicia goes full cat. QB even turns into the bee form she has in her intro, so you would think that's an advantage for her. And for other transformations, they're less obvious, but they make sense when you see them, like Sasquatch becomes a snowman, Rikuo the fishman becomes a frog, Talbane the werewolf becomes a dachshund, Lord Raptor the zombie rock star becomes a guitar, but my favorite is probably Shenko, who becomes a panda with a soccer ball, and I specifically like the soccer ball, because whenever she moves, the panda is tossing it up or chasing the soccer ball. It's like she's more concerned about the fun ball and is totally fine being a panda. Call her Genma Saotome. And the silliest transformation is probably Anacharis himself, who becomes a hieroglyphic slab. Just look at him walk. The main goal of this projectile is to hinder your opponent, since they are very slow to move and a weak target in this form, but it only lasts a few seconds or even less than a second depending on the circumstances, and it has such a slow startup and movement that it's unreliable to just throw out if your opponent is active. You gotta knock him down first, or at least have a proper setup. Regardless, the effect of this projectile makes it one of the most unique in all of fighting games. You just gotta know that scary faces coming out of a mummy's mouth is never going to be a good time for you. Number 8. Blanka-chan in Street Fighter 6. I generally consider Street Fighter to be the baseline of staple fighting game mechanics, so when you tell me a military man can slam his fists together to create a sonic boom, or a yoga master can produce fire from his mouth, it may sound weird in a different game, but it's normal for Street Fighter. And even with new characters, the projectiles keep the vibe of classic Street Fighter projectiles, so it was hard to think of anything truly strange in the projectile department, even on the strange characters. However, going back to one of Street Fighter's classic characters, I think I found it. Blanka did not have a standard projectile for like 30 years. For non-contact moves, he was all about the electricity, but not as a projectile. That changed in Street Fighter 6, where he got a new attack where he throws Blanka-chan dolls. One of the biggest story developments for the old characters was Blanka went from a green fellow who got his electric powers and green tint from eating eels when he was lost in the jungle, to a businessman who sells plushies based on his likeness and only paints himself green to go with the theme of the jungle and has electricity from a genetic mutation. But the dolls are the most important part here. He calls them Blanka-chan, and they were the most unique attack added to his basic arsenal in Street Fighter 6. Blanka's moveset was pretty much unchanged over the years leading up to this, just relying on his ball rolls and electric zaps, but now the Blanka-chan turns his close-range electricity into a mobile force against the opponent. He throws it out, and it just stands there, menacingly, with it starting at a different location on the screen depending on which punch you use to activate it. But with a little bit of classic electric zap, it walks towards the opponent and explodes on impact. If you enhance the electricity, it hops while moving forward without being destroyed on impact, which can create some fun juggling scenarios if it catches your opponent in the corner. This thing does not stop. Finally, if you use his Shout of Earth super move with the doll, it becomes a fast air projectile that does multiple hits on impact. With the variations in its speed and the angle at which it goes in the air, it makes for a tricky tool to keep your opponent guessing. And I guess the only thing Blanka needed all these years to change up his moveset were some pockets to carry them in. That being said, it really does depend on his pocket size, since he can only carry 3 of them at a time. Once you use 3 in a round, he's out of dolls, which explains why it's such a long-lasting projectile. Its limited uses per match is a trade-off for how durable they are. If anything, this is good advertising for his business to show his Blanka-chan dolls can survive a beating. In fact, they're the ones that give the beating. Number 7. Senkuro's gang from Samurai Shodown. Senkuro Yorozo is a character who used to get some negative press in the Samurai Shodown games. I think it was mainly from his appearance as a sub-boss in Samurai Shodown 5, where he was cheap in some ways. But when I discovered him in Samurai Shodown 6, I missed out on that and just thought he was a quirky guy. I love how outlandish the new character designs got towards the end of the original series run. I will talk about this Karakuri puppet on a list someday. But for Sankuro, he looks great. He has that Fist of the North Star influence and fights with a giant mallet. How can you hate this? But what I really love about playing as him are his projectiles. He has a gang of 3 goons that work in secrecy to help him. Depending on your attack input, he'll call out one of them to attack the opponent. Goshichi is a guy with big forearms and acts as a projectile from above to put those forearms to good use when he's called out. Ofuyo is the lady of the group who acts as a low projectile by sliding in, and Apache is the tallest who has that hold you in place projectile vibe as he grabs the opponent's legs. I can understand how this gang is why Sankuro was so annoying to fight against, but they always stood out to me as fun tools to use in battle. Their flavor is also great, since the group seems to almost be like a family. Sankuro isn't trying to take advantage of them, he just thinks he's the best and the gang agrees, so it's mutual arrogance. Plus, the confidence in Sankuro's voice as he calls out each partner adds to the power this group exudes. I'm almost conflicted to say that they're even that weird of projectiles, since this game has characters that use other characters as projectiles too, like Nakaruru's bird or Galford's dog, but those are trained wild animals. Something just feels odder when it's a guy in a weapon fight calling out his unarmed friends who only have the element of surprise and a dream on their side. What if the opponent swings their sword right as a goon is being called out? Seems like you'll be down a goon when those attacks collide. In the end, the vibe of Sankuro's gang makes them memorable as living projectiles and as a group of goofy guys and one girl. Number 6. Frank West's Zombies in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. A type of fighting game attack that I love that you don't see too often are those moves where an outside force attacks a character and they turn it around to use it as an attack against their opponent, intentionally or unintentionally. Like that one Samurai Showdown character who accidentally summons a dragon that breathes fire at her, but she dodges it and it hits the opponent instead. That's basically how Frank West's zombies work in Marvel vs. Capcom. They're not his zombies per se, but more zombies that are trying to eat him and he knocks them away, accidentally turning them into a projectile against the opponent. In the context of his series of origin, Dead Rising, he's a journalist stuck in a mall during a zombie apocalypse, so he has to fight them off with random things you'd find in a mall, which Marvel vs. Capcom takes a variety of for his moveset. Some of them are pretty practical weapons like axes or chainsaws, while others are quirky like plungers or shopping carts. This man is throwing pies at gods in this game. He actually has a cool level up mechanic with his camera in Marvel vs. Capcom that changes his weapons, but I'll cover that aspect of his moveset if it's ever relevant in another video. As for the zombies, he has 2 zombie themed moves. His zombie projectile is called Hammer Throw, no hammers involved, where a zombie attacks him and he briefly fights it off and sends it on its merry way towards the opponent. The light variant of this move is a slow walking zombie, and the medium one walks fast. They make for fun impediments for your opponent with their abnormal speeds, and for the heavy variant of this attack, it's the same speed as the medium one, but if it connects, it holds the opponent in place for a few seconds, letting Frank get in for some combos. Frank also has the attack Giant Swing, where a zombie attacks him again, only Frank makes more of an offensive effort against it by showing off his amateur wrestling skills. He swings it around by the legs and tosses it towards the opponent while moving himself forward. Even though it functions like a projectile, the game doesn't count it as an official projectile, but I'll consider it an honorary projectile. What I like about these moves is how seamlessly the animation starts up. Frank is just standing there or doing another attack, when out of nowhere, a zombie attacks him from an angle we can't see until it's already there. It's funny how for those few seconds, Frank completely pays no mind to his opponent because something else is trying to take his life. And I like that he calls out the zombies in one of his win poses for only going after him. You tell him, Frank. They may make for cool projectiles, but they're very inconsiderate.
So long!
KO! You win!
Again? Why do you guys always go for me?
Number 5. The Pig, and by extension the Dumpster from Injustice Gods Among Us. This attack is not exclusive to any character in the game. All characters could use these projectiles. In the first Injustice game, being the DC Comics fighting game series, they introduced stage interactables. Every stage had about half a dozen objects in the background the characters could use in combat, and each character was one of 3 classifications: Power, which means they threw most items; Gadget, which means they threw some items and would place bombs on others along with jumping off them for momentum; and Acrobatic, who could throw the same interactables as Gadget characters, but jumped off all other interactables with no bomb. For the throwable interactables, they were generally one use or respawned, but their main issue was they were powerful and unblockable. They took off about 15 to 20% of your health bar regardless of if they were used in a combo, and the only way not to get hit by them was to move out of the way or backdash to evade right as you're about to get hit, which took very precise timing. Interactables were overpowered, but it made for some ridiculous stuff. So let's get to the most fearsome interactable projectile of them all, the Pig. On either of the Arkham Asylum kitchen stages, on the left side, there's a meat rack with a single giant hanging pig in the center. This can be slid at a high speed towards the opponent if you're in range to throw it. However, unlike any other interactable you can throw, it does not disappear or have a cooldown time. It just moves to the end of the meat rack, so either player can immediately throw it in the other direction, and it can turn into a back and forth pig fight forever. The bigger implication of this is whoever gets near that pig first has more of an advantage in the fight, since they can do a combo, maybe knock the opponent away for a setup, and then also get a bonus 15% of guaranteed unscaled damage. That pig's unblockable, baby. Getting hit by the pig also leads to a hard knockdown, so the thrower has time to prepare their next attack while they wait for their opponent to get up. Maybe they can even reposition themselves to get that pig again. Because of how strategies were reliant on the pig on this stage, players referred to being near it as the pig advantage, with ultimate pig advantage going to whoever was player 1 on the stage, since they started the match closest to the pig on default. By extension, the dumpster interactable on the Gotham street level stage functioned similarly to the pig, only you can keep on throwing it towards the corner, so if your opponent was not quick to escape after being knocked down by it, you can just keep on chucking that dumpster for unprecedented damage. It happened for nearly a minute in a tournament match once. Though the dumpster could only be used by Gadget and Acrobatic characters. Power characters destroyed after the first use, so it has the potential not to be as omnipresent as the pig, which everyone can throw indefinitely. Plus, the pig is just funnier. I know everyone has Superman durability in this game due to a plot device, so they're throwing the pig extra hard and that's the reason it hurts, but the likes of Superman being hurt by a pig thrown by the Joker is just hilarious to me.
You're fired.
Number 4. George the Bomb from Skullgirls. Skullgirls always had some of the most creative moves and animations in fighting games, so their projectiles follow the lead. However, no matter how crazy their moves get, the weirdness of them will never be normalized to me, so there are so many projectiles to choose from for this list. You got hair spikes from the ground, folding chairs, parasols that cry napalm, and even your own character's head. But I think the best option to go with is the projectile master of the game, Peacock. She's a zoner, so of course she has state-of-the-art projectiles. She was an orphan on the verge of death who was saved by Dr. Avian's Argus system, allowing her to fight with whatever weapons she could imagine. Being a kid obsessed with classic cartoons, her weapons were akin to the rubber hose era in classic Looney Tunes. You know, anvils, Wild West guns, a runabout. But one of the most effective tools is George the Bomb. The weirdness of George is just how unique he is from other fighting game bombs, and just video game bombs in general. Just on the design level, he's a classic cartoony bomb with a fuse who has little arms and legs, and he just kinda waddles at the opponent. He's also the 8-ball in billiards, and when he explodes, he has the onomatopoeia of boom in the explosion. Furthermore, he has 3 variations of attack via Peacock. With the light punch command, Peacock gently tosses him out, and he slowly walks forward until he makes impact with the opponent second or walks off screen. For the medium variant, it has my favorite startup. George rides in on a boxcar and comes forward faster. The part I like is when Peacock calls him out, he zooms in from behind her, meaning the attack is active behind Peacock, so if the opponent tries to teleport or cross her up, George can potentially hit them before he's even in front of Peacock. I don't think I've ever seen a projectile that starts up that far back in a fighting game. That's really innovative. For the heavy version, George rides in on a plane and flies at an arc, so it hits at various angles. Combine all these versions of George with Peacock's other tools, and you're covering a lot of ground at different speeds. You just can't spam a lot of Georges, cause he can only be in so many places at once. It's also great that all three Georges can be Peacock's assist, so if you have a character with less range like Sarabella, Peacock and George can make the opponent's life a living hell. George at the air show was a nuisance of an assist for years. Finally, George has a companion bomb who's much larger and only a super move. George's name is a reference to Of Mice and Men, so naturally the large bomb is named Lenny. For a bar of super meter, Peacock places Lenny on the stage and he sits there for a few seconds before he explodes. Peacock can bat Lenny around for a bit to control where he is, but once that explosion goes off, take cover.
That's all, folks.
Number 3, Kazumi's Tiger from Tekken. Tekken is generally thought of as only hand-to-hand combat. The furthest reach you'll usually get with a single attack is something with a long limb, so when a projectile shows up, it stands out just because of how rare it is. Though when you think about the iconic attacks in Tekken, there's actually quite a few projectiles in there. The double character's lasers, Yoshimitsu's poison breath, Ogre's fire, Elisa's rocket punch, Kuma's fatal wind, and there's even a few more not including the guest character projectiles. They all fit in seamlessly to these characters' movesets, where I tend to forget that they're projectiles to begin with so they don't strike me as weird. But one projectile that did not blend into the background for me was Kazumi's Tiger projectile in Tekken 7. Being the spirit of Heihachi's late wife, she doesn't need to keep her tiger off to the side, it just materializes out of thin air whenever she needs it. And that's what makes it so jarring. All of a sudden, a human-sized animal appears and is running towards you. I know there are fighting bears and kangaroos in this series, but the stealth in hiding a tiger until the last second makes it seem extra ridiculous. Because Tekken is not meant to be a projectile-based game, it's very easy to dodge the tiger when Kazumi just throws it out all willy-nilly. Plus, it's just one tiger, so she has to wait for it to vacate the screen and has to finish her pose before calling another one. She can't just create a parade of tigers. Luckily, it's not real, so it can just teleport off the screen when it's done. But when she integrates it into her combos or setups where the opponent has little time to block, that's where it shines. The basic maneuver is a point and the tiger leaps a bit as it runs towards the opponent. She can also create a rising tiger, so he kinda does a little shoryuken, or I guess tiger uppercut would be more appropriate. I also like when the tiger does this ball roll that has a bit of startup. It's mostly good after knocking down your opponent, but I mainly like that he stays in place rolling until he spins out of existence. However, my favorite maneuver might be when he hangs on to the opponent for a second and kicks them away. It's like he's giving them a little hug. I know it's supposed to be a tiger mauling, but he seems so gentle as he does it. Final note, when I was talking about this attack with my friend and channel mod Michelle, aka Rainbow, she said, "End the tiger projectile," in reference to the "End the tiger" poster from that old Zoo Books ad. I didn't have anywhere else to mention that in this entry, so I wanted to mention it here.
KO. You win.
Number 2, Mei's Totsugeki from Guilty Gear. Do you know how much I love the novelty of saying Mei throws a whole freaking dolphin at you? Well, kind of. In the era of the most recent Guilty Gear game at the time of this video's release, Strive, Mei's Totsugeki is one of the most beloved and or infuriating memes that came from the game, where Mei charges at you on her dolphin named Totsugeki, or Mr. Dolphin in English. and the way she plays makes it real easy to get 2 dolphin charges in a single combo, or just let you keep dolphin charging for pressure. Either way, Mei yelling Totsugeki repeatedly has given her a reputation of being a pretty trolly character in this game. However, the dolphin is just a charge attack, not a projectile in Strive. The real projectile Totsugeki was in previous Guilty Gear games. In the XX and XR games, Mei can summon hoops for the dolphin to jump through. XR lets you use them to throw a single dolphin or ride the dolphins again, but in the XX Accent Core games, Mr. Dolphin had quite the life as a projectile. First off, in her normal rushes on the dolphin, she could spend a bit of meter and jump off him early to turn him into a projectile and give herself some extra setup room. But the true form of the dolphin projectile is in the hoops in this game. Throw a hoop and you can call out a dolphin to collide with the opponent, but hold down the attack button for longer and it fires off more dolphins. 2 seconds for 2 dolphins, 6 seconds for 3 dolphins, but for maximum chaos, hold it down for 12 seconds and you get 6 dolphins. I don't know how you can hold it down for that long in a match against another human, but if you manage to pull it off, it's a hilarious rain of dolphins. And based on the attack button you press, it affects where the dolphins are summoned, so they can land anywhere on the screen. I also love their face on impact in this game. They do the anime teary eye, while in later Guilty Gear games, they just keep their same facial expression on impact. XR still lets you use the dolphin as a projectile with the hoop, but you can only fire one off, and the general game plan for Mei kinda shies away from doing that. So over time, the dolphin projectile was reduced and later taken away from Mei's arsenal as new Guilty Gears came out. I would ask why, but it does make each version of Mei feel a bit more unique, so maybe that was the intent. Plus, Mei still has her other projectile in modern games with Mr. Otter, where he jumps out of imaginary water to toss a beach ball at the opponent, which is still weird for this list. You think the likes of these strong opponents can get hurt by a beach toy thrown by an otter? The answer is more likely than you think. And as Mei's super moves progress, she has more creatures of the sea to send towards the opponent, so Mei's mantra of throwing sea life is still present in all games.
Slap!
For number 1, I wanted to choose a projectile that did something I don't see from other projectiles. It may not look crazy on the surface, but the goofiness of what this projectile does on hit has been something I don't recall any other franchise doing before or even after. Number 1, Smoke's Smoke Bomb from Mortal Kombat. This one makes the list on its properties alone. In terms of throwing a smoke bomb, it's not that weird on its own. Mortal Kombat is very much an anything goes franchise in terms of its projectiles, so I didn't think the series had anything out of the ordinary in that department. Kung Lao has been throwing his bladed hat frisbee since the second game, so that set the bar on the aesthetically weird projectiles for the series. However, Smoke brought something unique to the table with his smoke cloud / smoke bomb starting in Mortal Kombat 2011, aka Mortal Kombat 9. The original version of Human Smoke in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 was just a clone of Scorpion but faster, and all other forms of him in games leading up to Mortal Kombat 9 featured his cyborg form. So when the developers created an all-new Human Smoke for that game, his moveset was rebuilt from the bottom. You have a few moves similar to Scorpion to reference his origin, like a teleport punch or an air throw, but the coolest attack they added to Smoke's arsenal in this game was his Smoke Cloud projectile. This projectile doesn't do damage on impact or freeze the opponent in place or knock them down or, well, I've been showing it on screen during this monologue so you've probably figured it out already, but this smoke cloud teleports the opponent to the sky and lets them fall. I've never seen a projectile that just teleports the opponent to the air, and that's something really cool to me. The point of this is to put the opponent in an airborne state and allow you to combo them while they can't block, or it can be used mid-combo to set the opponent up to get air grabbed or combo finished or set them up for a reset. There's also a way to use the enhanced version version called Smoke Bomb, which forces the opponent to get hit by it after they've been comboed in full and knocked down, so you essentially get a reset that starts the combo process all over again that the opponent can't react to, leading to damage that totals to over 100% if you have 3 bars of meter. However, this is a glitch, so with the wrong timing, it just doesn't hit or knocks the opponent away so you can't get 2 teleports in one combo. Regardless, the way this smoke teleports the opponent will always make it stand out among all fighting game projectiles to me. To an extent, this is just an alternate version of Scorpion's Get Over Here or Katana's Windstorm, since those also bring the opponent over to you or make them airborne respectively, but the flavor of Smoke's projectile always made it feel way different from those moves. A version of the Smoke Bomb was brought back in Mortal Kombat 1, where now when it explodes, it teleports Smoke himself to the opponent to do an overhead slice, and enhancing it turns him invisible when he does the teleport, so you can get a covert mix-up. In a way, the projectile is ultimately Smoke the character, since your reward for getting hit by it is having him in your face. However, it's hard to beat the Mortal Kombat 9 version of this move to me, so that will always be my favorite. So for surprising me, teleporting me, and being the reason I was defeated by my friend Doug for over a decade in this game, Smoke's Smoke Cloud / Smoke Bomb is the weirdest yet still coolest fighting game projectile.
Smoke wins.
Now, what did you think? Did all these projectiles surprise and shock you, or were some of them a bit too average for this list? And what are some of your favorite out-of-the-ordinary projectiles in fighting games, whether I discussed them or not? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.